Good evening. The topic I will present today is Nordic Air Power Cooperation and also Finland's recent F-35 decisions. And asking the question is, are we heading towards a new era? I'd like to thank the Academy for the opportunity to make this timely presentation. First of all, today, the collaboration between Nordic Air Forces is a very multifaceted and mature arrangement to include both fighter aircraft, air mobility, ground-based air surveillance, ground-based air defense, and also search and rescue. The most comprehensive and mature arrangement in all this is the interaction and cooperation between the fighter bases in northern Finland, northern Sweden, and northern Norway. During my presentation, I will make 3 points. First, the current Nordic Air Power Cooperation has long historical ties, all the way back to the World War II, the Cold War, and also the initial post-Cold War era. My second point is that the tactical integration project between the air power assets in Nordic, 3 Nordic countries are started in mid-2000s and conjured with strategic convergence between the Nordic countries starting from 2014. My third point will be that the current cooperative arrangement will evolve further with the advent of fifth generation air power. Going back to the historical ties, first of all, there are many examples, but I will mention a few. The Swedish Air Force set up not official, but a volunteer unit, Flygflottilj 19, that contributed to the war between Finland and Germany, and they shut down several Russian aircraft and lost a few other members. So they were an essential part of the international support to the Finns in their initial war against the Russians in the beginning of World War II. Also, Norway, after being invaded by the Germans, the government and also the military fled to UK, and we also set up a huge center, Air Force training center in Canada, and we also had squadrons in UK, and also we had Norwegians serving in UK squadrons. However, among all of those people that was trained in Canada and later served in UK were also Danes, 47 Danes, and we also have one Swedish pilot who went through the system, and they served in our units as integral colleagues by all means. The third example I have is that at the very end of World War II, the US Army Air Corps was allowed to use the Kallax air station at Luleå, and they had 10 transport aircraft there that had 2 missions. One mission was to fly personnel and material to the liberated part of Finnmark. At the very end of the Cold War, the Germans withdrew back to Troms. And the Americans from Kallax flew in over 14,000 persons and 1,200 tons of supplies to the liberated part of northern Norway. The American transport planes also dropped air supplies to Norwegian resistance forces and also agents in a final fight against the Germans in northern Norway. Jumping ahead to the Cold War. In the Cold War, there was some interaction, but it was mainly related to air safety. We had an agreement between Sweden and Norway and Denmark that we could, in an emergency, if the weather precluded any landing in our national airfields, we could divert to the neighboring country and use the base that's closest to our own home base. The so-called Sven Erik agreement was then utilized to enable safety if the weather deteriorated unpredictably. We also had some familiarization bases. When I was an F-16 pilot at Bodö, we flew one familiarization right to Kallax just to familiarize us with the approach and also the airfield itself. To my knowledge, no flights actually occurred in an emergency given these arrangements, but if they did, all the procedures were there to do so. In the initial part of the post-Cold War area, it went about almost 10 years afterwards. In 2001, we had one partnership for peace arrangement that popped up. It was the Nordic Air Meet. It was actually an arrangement set up to include the Swiss F-18s, and they could not exercise train with NATO air forces. But Norway, at Ørland Air Force Base, we set up a system where we also invited the Finns and the Swedes to participate in the Nordic Air Meet. And that was a military and political solution that was acceptable to the Swiss. So the four countries, Switzerland, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, were the founding fathers of the Nordic Air Meet, and later on other countries came along. And the arrangement was active every year until 2007. Then there was a pause, and the final Nordic Air Meet was held in 2012 in Finland, Sweden, without Norway, actually. The pause from 2017 to 2012 might actually have been caused by the emergence of the cross-border training and Arctic fighter meet arrangements that we'll come back to later. The tactical integration phase, as I will call it, where we really see an active collaboration between the Finnish, Norwegian, and Swedish Air Force started in the mid-2000s. Because the Nordic Air Meet arrangement was annual exercise. Everyone met at one base, had to fly in, had to deploy, so it was not. You could not have frequent training and exercising given that setup. The first arrangement that came about was the so-called Arctic fighter meet. It started off as an arrangement between Finland and Sweden, and Norway joined from 2007. It was similar to the NATO Air Meet setup, in the sense that you meet once a year and you deploy to one base. And Norway, Finland, and Sweden, they alternated between having the host base responsibility, and it's an annual exercise. And also the US Air Force has participated in this meet. And the purpose of this is something we call close in battle. It's basic fighter maneuvers and air combat maneuvers that's practiced between the fighter aircraft from the participating nations. The really significant development came with the cross-border training system. It's different from the other arrangements in the sense that it enabled weekly and monthly training between the air forces. And it was very effective in the sense that you could participate from your home base. The Norwegian aircraft, they flew in to Sweden from Bodö air station. The Finns participated once a month, and they flew in from their base in Rovaniemi. And so other two nations or three nations could meet in a common airfield or airspace and train together. If you look back at the history, actually, the cross-border training arrangement was initially set up between Finland and Sweden, and Norway joined in first with Sweden in 2009, and then Finland came in 2010 to make a trilateral arrangement. The size of the weekly encounters were varying all the way from 4 to 20 aircraft with the air combat training and also combined air operations exercises set up. It soon became a flagship in the Nordic military cooperation. It's very important to mention that this was not intended or was not initiated from the leadership in the Ministries of Defense or the air staff. It was actually the station commanders and the squadrons in Rovaniemi, Kallax, and Bodö that developed the idea and also set up the idea. And of course, the diplomatic clearance regime. Instead of applying for diplomatic clearance every time, they were able to get the air staffs and ministries to set up a permanent diplomatic clearance arrangement that could be activated according to the yearly plans, and that was of course facilitated this frequent training between the air forces. It was later in 2012 attached to the Nordic Defense Cooperation arrangement. Sometimes here we also see that the US Air Force, they fly in with aircraft from the UK and participate in the cross-border training events. It's the third tactical integration arrangement that was set up was the Arctic Challenge exercise. It's similar to, or it's a biannual exercise. It's a huge exercise, and the first one was held in 2013. And you have aircraft from the Nordic countries, but also from European and Canadian US Air Force participating. And the host bases are in both in Finland, Norway, and Sweden, in the northern peninsula of the Scandinavian area. It's increased in 2019 to include 100 aircraft from 9 nations, and it became the largest fast jet exercise in northern Europe. In 2020 and in 2021, the exercise was somewhat limited due to COVID-19, but we expect in 2023 that the exercise is full back into the setup that we saw in 2019. A recent development has been that especially from a Swedish initiative actually, that the Arctic Challenge exercise has matured to a so-called flag level exercise with the aid of specialists from the US Air Force. So it's a very mature and very high-level exercise now, involving not only the Nordic countries, but also other European countries and USA, Canada. However, among the European nations are also PFP nations like Switzerland participating in this exercise. You also had something called the Icelandic Air Meet, was a one-time event. I think it was in when Norway had to man the Icelandic air policing in 2014. Sweden and Finland came also along with Gripen and F-18s and flew together with the Norwegians in the area around Iceland. It was a deployment exercise, and it was also an event that can actually show some solidarity to the Icelandic force. However, it has not been repeated afterwards. There has also been other developments. So this is not only about fighter aircraft cooperation. We've seen now recently that the Nordic ground-based air defense communities have started to collaborate with staff exercises and tabletop exercises. The Norway and Finland have the NASAMS ground-based air defense system. Sweden has recently acquired the US Patriot system. And so you have a possibility to actually set up units in the future, I hope, with both NASAMS and Patriot being integrated and can function together in a mix of ground-based air defense systems. And that will be very interesting to see how the ground-based air defense cooperation evolves in the future among the Nordic countries. And especially if Denmark also acquires ground-based air defense, as they plan to do, but not set a target date yet. We also have some initiatives regarding to build and exchange information regarding air surveillance in our common area. There are some practical, legal, and also some technical issues, but they're slowly and gradually being solved and toward a greater integration. So there's still some challenges ahead in NORCA's initiative. However, the evolution seems to go in the correct and the desired direction to be able to share information, which is very important, not only against fighter threats, aircraft threats, but also other types of threats that comes to the airspace. There are also some initiatives regarding unmanned aerial systems, space activities, search and rescue among Nordic countries. And also, very important is that we have now a frequent regular meeting between Nordic air chiefs to discuss all these matters. What we're also seeing as a trend is over from 2014, 2004, is that Sweden and later Finland participate in international joint exercises in Norway. And you also had the Loyal Arrow 2009 NATO exercise being hosted by Sweden. So if you look at, it's quite common now that if you have NATO exercises, joint exercises, you see participation from all Nordic countries. And especially if it's initially from cold response to 2012, both Sweden and Norway open up their airspace. So the airplay in the exercise transcended national borders. And also for the NATO exercise Trident Juncture in 2018, the cross-border exercise building on the cross-border training system that was in place. Now, the strategic convergence point is that if you look back at Nordic cooperation, we have had very different setups regarding security policy and national defense policies. However, in 2009, there was an initial attempt to set up a more closer Nordic air defense cooperation. Many initiatives were taken, but however, the track record was poor. But in 2014, when the Russians changed the posture, first in 2008 or 2007, but later in 2014, that led to tighter Nordic collaboration with higher ambitions for the Nordic cooperation. Within mock attacks against targets in Sweden and Norway, we've seen overflights of Finland airspace and so forth. And this has somewhat had the effect of a common will among all the Nordic countries to have a closer military and also security policy cooperation. However, nothing seems to change regarding Swedish and Finnish positions towards NATO membership. However, there are a number of bilateral and trilateral arrangements between Nordic countries themselves, but also with the United States that are in place. And also Sweden and Finland have a special status now in NATO and also agreements with NATO on some areas. It's very important to realize after the tactical integration have been going now all the way back since 2008, is that if there will something happens in our part of the world, the interoperability and between the air forces in Finland, Norway, and Sweden are so high that we can actually go to war together. We can fight together. So if there's a coalition of the willing being set up to deal with a common threat, a common challenge, at least from the Air Force point of view, we can collaborate very closely and effectively, even in combat, as the situation is right now. The advent of the F-35 will change the tactical cooperation somewhat, but not in principle. In Bodö Air Force Station has now been closed down. Ørland has taken over the responsibility for the Norwegian side. As of now, this year, they will for the first time participate in the Nordic Air Force cooperation with F-35. The program has been planned and set up already for 2022 with the F-35s interacting with aircraft from Finland and Sweden. Finland has now decided also to acquire the F-35. The Danes have already done so. So in the future, there will be quite a number of F-35s in the Nordic Air Forces. Also, Sweden has started a modernization with the introduction of the Gripen E model. To my knowledge, up to 60 aircraft will be purchased. And also the C and D models will be upgraded. Approximately 100 aircraft in the future, I believe, according to my information. So all in all, if you count the number of F-35s in Nordic countries and also the modern and sizable largest air force actually in Sweden among Nordic countries, it will be quite a potent force in the future. And given the and also the collaboration with both training exercises will continue with new aircraft, but they will change character due to some practical reasons. The Sweden having Gripen will not be a showstopper in any way. Actually, in some ways, it will be an advantage actually to the types of training and exercising that will continue into the future. But Sweden has also joined in, at least the government and also the industry, are now joined in with the UK 6th generation Tempest program. In 6th generation air power programs, you'll see a closer collaboration between manned and unmanned aircraft. So perhaps if you go to cross-border training, Arctic Challenge exercise in 2035, 2040, there will be a mix of manned 5th generation and 6th generation fighter aircraft, and also unmanned systems, and perhaps even weapons being launched from the ground or from drones, from the fighter aircraft. But in principle, the collaboration between the Nordic Air Forces, both training and exercises, will continue, but with more modern aircraft and with more modern systems, and also more integrated systems, both technologically but also procedurally and so forth. So if I have time now at the very end, I can show you some short slides. So can you see the slide?
Yes, we see them.
Okay, good. This is the first slide I have. It's just to show you that even right after World War II, but also prior to the Sven agreement, we also had exchange among the Nordic countries. The picture to the right is Danish fighters in Bodö in 1952, participating in the NATO exercise. And to the left is a Swedish Tunnan in Bodö in 1955, visiting the recently built air station. Already in 2004, we had Swedish aircraft Gripen participating in a joint international exercise from Bodö air station, and this was long before the other arrangements came about. The Nordic Air Meet 2007 was hosted. Here you see also the Swiss flag to the very left. If you look at the Arctic Challenge exercise that continued after the Nordic Air Meet was closed down, you also see the Swiss flag among all the flags there. And but that's changed now from an annual to a biannual exercise. The Arctic Fighter Meet, the first arrangement that Norway participated in, starting in 2007, hosted annually now, and with mainly the three countries, the usual suspects, Finland, Norway, and Sweden, but also US Air Force at some events. Cross-border training occurring weekly and monthly. From a security policy point of view, this one is very important to uphold, because the other exercises or the other events, they are annual or biannual. The only arrangement that sets forth a regular interaction between the Finnish, Norwegian, and Swedish Air Forces is the close-border training system. We were concerned that with the introduction of the F-35, that this arrangement would be paused or closed down. But the Norwegian Air Force, the F-35 community, promised us that this will be continued, and it's very important that you had a normal situation being encounters between the fighter aircraft with the from the three air forces and three countries. Because in a crisis, if we start interacting to prepare ourselves from nothing, that's an escalatory move. But if the normal situation is interaction, then the threshold is far lower. And Icelandic Air Meet, like I told in the introduction, it's a one-time event. And also here you see the Bomber Task Force picture taken in 2016 with the bolt-ups, where it's the F-16s, Eurofighters, and also Gripens flying with American bombers. This also occurred over Sweden in recent years. And that tells you some about the interoperability between the air forces now being built between Nordic countries, but also now being mature enough that Finland and Sweden also can interact with other countries or the other systems themselves. The F-35 will be a major factor in Nordic air power, with 3 out of 4 countries acquiring them. This will then be the 5th generation introduction already occurring this year in the different arrangements. However, with the 6th generation air power systems being introduced with, for instance, the Swedish participation in the British Tempest program, you might see in the future then 6th generation fighter aircraft, 4.5, 5th generation fighter aircraft interacting with unmanned aerial vehicles, perhaps also firing air-to-air missiles from the unmanned aircraft, or delivering air-to-ground weapons from these. And also, you might have a fighter aircraft firing ground-based weapons based on ISR information from these extremely modern platforms. So my point with this is that the cross-border training and also Arctic Fighter Meet in a couple of decades from now will be quite different from what we've seen the last 15 years. So with that, I will thank you for your attention, and I'm opening up now for questions and answers.